Morning, students and listeners. Welcome to a discussion on social change. And this course relates to FSS 1, Foundation Course in Humanities and Social Sciences. Well, I'm Vashum, and I have with me Dr. Kapoor, who will be one of the main resource persons here in our session now. And before we go on to the topic, I would like to introduce him a little bit. Of course, we are all from the Faculty of Sociology, School of Social Sciences, and this is part of our presentation now. And Dr. Kapoor, as some of you might have known, he is both a theorist and also a person, a sociologist oriented in field works also. And apart from that, he's a very good scholar in terms of producing materials for the students. And so, to his credit, he has over 10 books and so many articles written on various subjects. And social change is one of the areas where he has also specialized. And of course, it's also part of my interest. Well, having said that, I would like to just orient you on the topic that we are going to discuss with you. And before I go to that, may I request the students and listeners that should you have any query or any question to be asked even during the session, you are most welcome. We'll try to respond to your queries. And we too will be trying to have a more interactive discussion rather than just a mere presentation. And I hope we'll try to make it that way. Any topic that comes, we'll try to answer it. And we'll try to link to your interest, of course, trying to revolve around the syllabi also. And now, the areas, as you know, that we'd like to touch upon are, say, the definition and concepts. Then we'll try to come to the approaches to the understanding of social change. And you know, there are so many approaches. Could be evolutionary theory, could be cyclical theory, it could be structural functional theory, it could be conflict theory, or it could be interpretive theory, and the synthesis of all those theories also. So those approaches we'll try to touch also. And besides that, we'll try to also dwell on the factors of social change, how social change are brought about, what are those agents that have caused social change. So those factors, maybe biological, maybe geographical, maybe technological, or sociocultural, political, all those aspects will also be dealt with. Then, if we have time, we'll try to touch some areas on the impact of social change. I think we should include that in our discussion because that is also very important. And along with that, we can also brief something about the rate of social change. And if we still have time, we can see social change vis-a-vis future and social change and future. So these are the brief outline that we'd like to make before we just set up for our main discussion. Yeah, having said that, I think now we should try to concentrate in this initial part on the definition and concept of social change. And we'll be taking some time to dwell on this. Well, just as an introduction to this, we can just say that, yeah, social change can be defined in many ways, of course. Many sociologists define it in different ways. And when we reflect our individual life, our societal lives, we find that I would just like to relate on our experience also. There are changes taking place even in our individual life, and so also in societal life also. Some changes are not readily seeable, obvious, or conspicuous. They can be seen by our naked eyes or by our sense. Those are subtle changes, caused by subtle agents. And over time, we can see more of the changes. And later, we can also see even radical changes, which sometimes we call transformation or true revolution. So these are our experiences. But what is it that we call social change? Like I said, there are so many definitions, and not all sociology will agree to one's own definition. But however, there are some agreement that most of the sociologists define on social change. And these are, I'm giving you the broad definition of social change, which is agreeable to most of the sociologists, that in social change we define as a significant alteration or modification of social organization and or social structure, because there can be some differences about social organization and social structure. So I said and or social structure and their functions and their various manifestations. Now there are so many elements there. Organization, okay, slash structure, and then their functions, and how they appear later in many forms, in various manifestations. So these are parts which are included in social change. And when we talk of social change, and we can talk about endogenous kind of social change and exogenous kind of social change. See, there are various agents. Sometimes it goes by within the community also. And there are circumstances where social change are brought about by external forces or external agents outside the community's purview, context. And when we talk of social change, we also know that there are material kind of social change, like we find in most of the cultural aspects, non-material cultural aspects, and we also find ideational, which is non-material aspects of change. So this could be also addressed when we proceed into our further discussion. But now, having said that, sociologists are most concerned on the basic questions of social change. There are few basic questions. Now, some sociologists may not be very comfortable in saying whether social change is good or bad. Some would say it's good, some may say it's bad. So let us just put it in a way like whether social change is good or bad for the society. There are different interpretations by different theorists and school of thoughts on that. We can come later. And then sociologists are also concerned about the causal factors. What are the agents? Which agents cause social change at one point or at different points of time? This is one of the basic questions again. And the third basic question is also of the impact that social change has brought about. What are the impacts? What are the results? And what are the manifestations that have been brought about by social change. So these are the basic questions. There are also other questions too, but these are the basic questions that we'll be addressing now also, and this is also the main concern of sociologists. And I have just studied by way of introduction. Maybe our resource person, Dr. Kabur, would say something and elaborate something on the concept and definition of social change, and with illustrations. I think there will be lots of illustrations also.
Thank you, Dr. Vasham. You have been very competent in outlining the general characteristics of social change in a very lucid kind of manner. I would also like to take up this same question so that we can show that two sociologists can come to the same conclusion from two different paths, which is very important in sociology, because one of the basic facts about sociology is that different people, different sociologists have got different takes on the same subject. Now, so far as social change is concerned, it is one of the laws of society. In fact, even the Buddha said, all things must pass. Society does not remain static. This is one of the strange facts about society, and it makes us wonder that the Marxian utopia, which is supposed to be attained after a great deal of revolutionary changes, how would it remain static? There would be change in utopia, and so would utopia remain as it is? Now, how does social change occur? This is a question which sociologists ask themselves, and many theories have been based upon this. Right up to the postmodernist theories, they have a particular take on how social change occurs and what social change is. As Dr. Vasham very ably pointed out, that there has to be a significant alteration. Social change is not just a slight movement in the direction of progress. There has to be a significant impact upon organizations, institutions, educational institutions, business organizations, corporations, inventions, innovations. Everything in society must, at one stage or the other, indicate some significant alteration. Now, what has been the significant alteration so far as society is concerned? First of all, there was the primitive horde, the ancient primitive communalism and communism. At that stage, the people who lived there and were not sociologists, at that time there were no sociologists in the technical sense of the term, they believed that society is like this and will remain like this, and there are no further possibilities of movement forward or movement backward. It will remain static. But the law of social change, because this is a law as much as a law of gravity, and that is why we are called a social science. There are certain laws, and so social change is one of these basic laws. It takes place in the interaction of individuals and society. An individual comes forward, and this is one of the theories and factual theories, I would say, factual observations put forward by Weber, that an individual is very important. A charismatic individual is very important in the aspects of social change. Now, what do we mean by this? For example, Buddha was a charismatic leader. Jesus Christ was a charismatic leader. These leaders had such a powerful vision of society and a powerful vision of morality that they influenced people around them, and a cult following began. Beyond the cult, over a few years or a few hundred years, it became a sect, and then finally a full-blown religion. Buddhism became a full-blown religion within 100 or 200 years and spread all over Southeast Asia. This is also part of social change. Unless there is a visionary in society, whether he is a businessman or whether he is an artist, whether he is a filmmaker or whether he's a sociologist, there has to be someone who spearheads a certain series of ideas, because social change is all about ideas and ideology and how the way of thinking also changes. When we go further, we will be discussing, of course, the technological side of it. We don't want to mix that up right here, but it affects the way of thinking of people, the way of living of people, the way they conceptualize the universe around them. In short, it's a sort of paradigm shift. One particular way of living, one particular way of thinking, a particular way of conceptualizing suddenly and quickly changes from one set of thoughts and concepts to another set of thoughts and concepts, and the world is no longer the same, because as philosophers tell us, the world is as we perceive it. And this is what sociological theory also tells us, that the world is as we perceive it. The functional theorist perceives it in a certain way, and therefore that perception comes to be real for him, and he sees the world in a functional, holistic perspective. Similarly, the conflict theorist has an exploitative view of the world. His concepts, his definitions, his way of thinking, his entire superstructure of the mind is based upon the fact that there is surplus value in the society's production processes, which is not being distributed equally, and therefore one set of people, those people who have the means of production, are exploiting the ones who work the means of production. These are all part of the aspects of social change, and we will be discussing this further when we talk about the causes of social change or how it has been conceptualized. But so far as definition goes, I would say that the interactive elements between individual and society is very important. Some may say that it is a group phenomena. You may say that, but within a group there is always a leader, or at the most a small coterie of people who direct the flow. So social change is not only about the way we live physically, it's also the way we conceptualize the universe. For instance, we talk about the Copernican revolution. At one point it was believed by everyone on the earth that the sun revolved around the earth. But then there was a revolution in thinking, and a revolution in science, a revolution in technology. And now today we all know that it's the earth which revolves around the sun. At one point everyone was sure about these facts, and as we are sure about these facts now. But social change ensures that no single generation repeats itself. Within generations there are social changes, and each generation views the universe in a different way, perhaps from the shoulders of the previous generation, in a better way, in a more comprehensive way, in a way in which they can organize their lives better, they can organize their morality better, and they can face the situations which come to them on a daily basis or on an annual basis. That means on a short run basis, middle run basis, and long run basis, just because of the fact that the concepts have changed. In the 18th and 19th century there were no aeroplanes, for instance. There was no air travel, but there were ships, and people believed that ships were the ultimate way of travel. This is the way that we are going to go from east to west or west to east, and this is the way it takes 21 days or 30 days or 2 months to go from India to England. Today it is unthinkable to have lived in such a world. Today people do not even conceptualize in terms of weeks. It's a matter of hours before you touch down on any other part of the world. So from the primitive horde which maximum rode horses or sat on their buffaloes or any other animal which they used for the hunt, to the man and mankind who has come and is traveling in space and is trying to discover life outside, all these are manifestations of social change. I personally think that any single comprehensive definition of social change would have to be supplemented by many corollaries, but if we list the elements as I have and give a general idea, and Vasham said give some illustrations, therefore I have been giving some examples, then I think we get a better idea of what social change is all about. And since we have promised that this would be interactive, I would ask Vasham to tell us whether social change is at all necessary.
Oh, thank you so much. I think you have given a very lucid and it was beautifully presented, I should say, on the concepts and the nuances of social change. But before we go to that, I think it will be good to orient the students on the fundamental framework. So now we can talk about the approaches to the understanding of social change. I think that will be a good idea because students may be confused as to how many approaches are there, what are the approaches, what are approaches. So I think like it was said earlier, there are different approaches to the understanding of social change, because social change are also seen in different perspectives. As you see from the window of your house, looking outside from a specific direction, you find something which is seeable with your eyes, and that structure you'll keep it in your mind. If somebody sees the same body that you are seeing from a different perspective on the sideways, say, you see it from east, and the other one sees from south or north or west, he or she will see in a different way. The shape might be different because they are seeing on the other sides, which they cannot see on your side. But some see it also in a larger scope. Some may see it in a narrower perspective, or some in broader perspective. So these are perspectives, and approaches are in a way a kind of perspective. They are school of thoughts. Well, I think we should go one by one, and in terms of this chronological sequence, maybe we can take out something on evolutionary theory, which I think preceded most of the approaches to the understanding of social change as far as sociologists are concerned. Well, now I would just like to acquaint you as to what evolutionary theories look at social change. But there are two categories even in evolutionary theories also. There are different theories, and of which there are two compartments. One, we can say those classical evolutionists, and the second part we can keep it as neo-evolutionists. And so following their theories we call it evolutionary theories. Classical evolutionary theories and neo-evolutionary theories. Now, what is classical evolutionary theory with special reference to social change? These theories developed sometime in 19th century. It is not too long ago. The emphasis is that changes takes place in a unilinear way. They follow stages in sequence, from simpler to complex, or from lower to the higher side and highest. So they believe that there are stages which takes in a unilinear way. Now, who are these people who propounded these theories, who supported these theories? We can start naming any of those sociologists. We can name Auguste Comte, where he says social change, the changes that is taking place in society, are in stages, where he says first it comes the theological stage, and then it goes on to metaphysical stage or phase. Then the third stage, which according to him is higher than the preceding two, is the positive or scientific stage. Now you can see that how unilinearly they are keeping it, and August Comte did that. And it is not only August Comte. There are scores of classical evolutionists. We can still name Herbert Spencer, who thinks that society evolves from simpler to complex societies, the most complex being human society. And still more, there are well-known evolutionist theories like E.P. Tyler. And I think students of anthropology and sociology are quite acquainted with his name. Sometimes he's called the father of anthropology, modern anthropology. According to him, human stages evolved from those belief systems which he called animism, then polytheism, belief in many gods, and then he gives the highest stage as monotheism. According to E.P. Tyler, monotheism, belief in one God, is the highest kind of belief system. So these are stages where he is grading. And Lewis Morgan, another well-known anthropologist and sociologist, would like to classify society in terms of, in a linear way, in terms of technological advances. He says, first it came the savagery stage, then it goes to barbarism stage, and then the third one is civilization, the stage of civilization. So he also gives gradations. And so these are classical theories and propounded by classical theorists. But later, somewhat later, some thinkers tried to revise evolution system in their own perspective. Some would call it improvised way of looking at evolutionary theory. And three names could be mentioned here mainly. V. Golden Child is an archaeologist, and he gives perspective on archaeological perspective. Then we can talk of Leslie White, where he talks of energy and technology and cultural development. And then we also have Julian Stewart, who talks about multilinear way of evolution of society. According to Gordon Child, as an archaeologist, he sees the world in an archaeological perspective. He said, the first age that we can give to human society, the most primitive, or the primitive is not a good term to use it, but anyway, just for analytic purpose, let me do that, is Paleolithic age. Some would call it Old Stone Age. Then he gives a higher stage, which he called Neolithic stage. And still further up, he gives Bronze Age as more advanced than those two. And then the fourth stage, which is the last stage for him, is Iron Age. So in terms of these stages, gradations, he gives 4 stages. But Leslie White tries to classify, to create these processes of social change, societal change into technological advances which are controlled and manipulated by man. And according to him, energy, when harnessed by society and controlled and used by human beings with technology, gives what is called cultural development. And there is a well-known formula which is called E into multiplied by T. E is energy, multiplied by technology, E into T equal to C stands for cultural development, culture. So he said culture is nothing but this is the product of energy harnessed with technology. So he gives in that formula. And still further, Stewart looked at that. He is also one of the contemporaries of Leslie White. He looked at the change of society, and according to him, he said, no, there is no one gradation that could be given. There are specific cases in the culture or subculture that could develop. But there are many other ways of evolution of society, according to the circumstances, according to the context, according to the conditions. And he calls it multilinear way of looking at this evolutionary theory of society. So these are few points which we can talk of evolutionary theory. And now there are so many other theories, cyclical theories, there are structural functional theories, which Dr. Kapoor had mentioned a little bit, and conflict theories, and some other theories like interpretive theories of Max Weber and Clifford Kiss, for example, and still more. There are theories presented by different sociologists, but we can just pick up the most prominent and popular approaches. And I think Dr. Kapoor would do well to pick up one of those or two so that you can just tell them that the approaches, maybe cyclical or maybe functional conflict or whatever.
Thank you, Dr. Asham. You have presented the case for the evolutionary theories with great detail and with a lot of names of sociologists and anthropologists. And I think that I would like to be a little brief on some of these theories so that we can get on to factors of social change and a little bit on the rest of our agenda, including impact and social change and the future. So far as cyclical, or also they are known as cyclical theories, are concerned, they directly contradict evolutionary theories in that while evolutionary theory goes from 1 to 10, 1, 2, 3, 4 in terms of progress, cyclical theory says that you go round and round the mulberry bush, so to speak. You develop, you progress, and then you retrogress. So there is an advanced society, there is a society which is in the middle, a medieval society, there is an ancient society. And this goes on and on throughout eternity. In terms of politics, some people have talked about the fact about the elite theories, in which there are the elites, the governing elites, and the elites which are ruled, and these also go around in circles. First, there is the governing elite, and then there is the opposing elite, and then the opposing elite removes the governing elite and becomes the governing elite, and so on and so on and so forth. There is also another more serious aspect to this, in that the historian Toynbee talked of challenge and response. This is also a cyclical theory of evolution or social change rather, because Toynbee pointed out that at a certain point in society's progress, there is a series of challenges arising from biological factors, geographical factors, technological factors, cultural factors, and these have to be met in such a way in which they are overcome, and if they are overcome, society goes on to another stage of progress. So in the midst of the cyclical theories, there is also a theory of progress within the cycle, but that it would not be called a cycle. I would think it would be better called a spiral, because it doesn't remain at the same level, it goes up higher, the conceptualizations are higher. After a society has successfully taken on a challenge, whether it is technological challenge, for instance, these days one of the biggest challenges that is faced by humankind, though it is not discussed all the time, is the fact of how to make use of the nuclear piles, the nuclear stockpiles. that have gathered all around the world, and it is becoming impossible even to diffuse them. They are there ready only to be used but not to be diffused. The possibility of rechannelizing such energy into electricity and other such usages has to be examined, and then these stockpiles, instead of becoming a threat to human society by their leakages or sudden and unpredictable outbreaks around the world, even leading to miscalculations and nuclear war, then social change would have to take place in such a manner that the awareness of human beings becomes tuned to it. So cyclical theories talk of challenge and response, they talk of elites and they talk of non-elites, and they talk about society going round in a specific pattern. But as we have pointed out, that this is a misnomer, because you cannot go round in a cycle, because that remains at the same level. These are actually spiral theories of progress and social change. So also there are functional theories and conflict theories, which I think you are so familiar with that we will not really dwell upon them. And the synthesis is also obvious, that it is neither this nor that, but it is a combination of all of these factors. We go on now to talk about some of the factors of social change, and specifically the technological factors. And here I would like to ask Vashum how far he thinks that the recent technological changes in electronic media and electronic goods and means of communication has become a source of social change in the sense of significant alteration, and also if he could say a few words about how it would affect in the future.
Thank you so much. But before I get on to your question, it was very interesting when you shared something about the concepts of cyclical theories. You did mention a little bit on that, of how the governance changes from one to another. And it comes to my mind of Pareto's theory of circulation of elites, where he mentions specifically of the foxes and lions. And I still keep in my mind always. Here, Pareto thinks that there are people like lions, there are people like foxes who can manipulate. He says these foxes are manipulators. They are cunning in that sense. Whereas lions, as noble as it is, as bold as a lion is, they are bold, and they have a tendency to use force and even military power. So he says, in the context of cyclical, or you can say spiral theory, which Dr. Kapoor was saying, that among the elites, the lions, like group of politicians, try to capture the power, try to get access to power, try to become the authority by way of force and military power. And over time, the foxes will try to do many ways, and they try to form alliance. They also try to manipulate things, and they try to come back to power again. And over time again, the lion would come back once again and try to take the power again. So there are, in a way, it is cyclically, if we take into account his, circulation of elites and the theory on foxes and lions. Having said that, there is also one more, which I think I should mention before I just get on to your question of interpretive theories. And this, I think, it's not well discussed in many of our discussions these days. Of course, this is very important. this is developed by Max Weber, and is also, I think, lots of contribution from Clifford Geertz, one well-known anthropologist. And after him, we know that there is interpretive sociology or interpretive anthropology from Clifford's one contribution. According to them, they take a lot of importance, weightage to meaning systems and interpretations of social action by the actors themselves. How the actors interpret the meaning system, and how over time the meaning of the symbols that symbolically represented changes, and also the value systems which ultimately gives about the evolutions of society. So this also comes under what we call the approaches of social change. Now I think I should get back quickly to what he had raised. I hope I have not forgotten his question. I think it was to do with the factors of modern technology, electronics or whatever, as an agent of, or as a factor, causal factor of social change. Of course, there are many other factors of social change which I think we will not be able to take up, but I think students should be mindful about these biological factors of social change. It could be human, it could be non-human. And there are also other factors like geographic factors caused by geographical agents. And there are also, yes, socio-cultural factors, which I think we'll touch a little bit. But now, he was saying something on technological factors. Yes, technological, I think the most important agent of social factor could be attributed, one of the most important factors should be attributed to technological factors. Because it is technology that has given us lots of, differences in our way of life, in societal life, which is nothing but social change. And also we have socio-cultural factors too, because of social movements, because of social revolutions, maybe because of social reformation, or whatever. These factors give effect social change in the society, and we should take note of all these important factors. But I think maybe we are almost running out of time, and so I don't think we'll be able to even discuss about the impact of social change, because there are lots of impacts on social change, and even the synthesis of the theories of social change in the future. Anyway, for today, we'll just try to wind up by saying that social change is nothing but significant alterations of social organization or structure and of functions and various manifestations. I think you should understand that, and there are different approaches to understanding of social change. There are different factors, there are different rates of social change, there are different impacts of social change, and I think we have done, most of the aspects, but which we could not do it save for, paucity of time. Maybe next time, if you get time, we'll try to cover more of the areas. And I really thank Dr. Kapoor for being with me, and I think you have had a good, we have had a good session on this interactive session. And if you have any queries, we'll be quite willing to respond to your queries. And this is all for today.